You all know that I've been taking a deep dive on God having a body and looking into the works of Francesca Stavrakopoulou and, of course, Daniel McClellan and other scholars who've noticed God has a body. We're talking about the God of the Bible here, right? Even though this name of this deity can be kind of shifty, especially if you want to say El and Yahweh, and all of these gods are the same. Long story short, I would refer you to Esoterica's recent video on Yahweh to kind of get a taste of why this is an issue. But in this video, I noticed Kip Davis, Dr. Kip Davis, and Pat Lowinger were over on Gnostic Conformance channel. And I had to ask kind of a tasty, frisky question about God and how bad does it really get with God's language, the biblical language about God sexually toward Israel and maybe God's enemies. Is there something like a clear passage that you would say is the worst one? Because there's some pretty nasty stuff there between God and others.
MythVision podcast, go and subscribe. I'm sure most of you are, but and any of you stragglers out there, go and do it. You know you want to. Let's get into this. This is a good question right here. What is the most vivid sexual passions between God and Israel or God's enemies? How bad does it get?
I feel like Derek is providing us a leading question here. So off the top of my head, I would say Ezekiel chapter 16 is pretty brutal, in which Ezekiel tells this prophecy in which Yahweh is depicted as basically raping the young maiden Israel as he enters into a covenant with her, and then is in a covenant marriage relationship with this unfaithful spouse, which from a modern perspective we would classify as extremely abusive. I'll just say that people go and look at Ezekiel chapter 16. It's pretty shocking. This was one of the things that the Hebrew prophets in particular would use this sexualized imagery. They would use these depictions of rape and abuse as a means to proclaim Yahweh's judgment on the people.
Wow. Anything on that, Pat?
No, it's again.
Kip's the team. No, Kip. No, it's okay.
I can tell you some really bad things the early church fathers said, but no.
All right. Thank you for that. Derek's got one more. I know this because I saw it. I'm just scrolling down to find it. Wow, there's a lot of comments today. Oh, where'd it go?
There's a lot of super chats too.
Did I pass Derek's other one? I know he had two.
Derek Schmerich.
Derek Schmerich.
Right.
Oh, here we go. Here it is. How common in the ancient Near East for the gods' genitalia playing a role in their literature, and does this give credibility to Yahweh being similar?
Well, I'll start with the end of this. I certainly think so, because the best way, in my opinion, the best way to understand the religions and the culture of ancient Israel is by way not just through the biblical text, but then trying to understand what's in the biblical text relative to whatever we know about their closest contemporaries, the people who lived literally right around them. So the ancient Near East is the realm out of which all our comparative data comes from. And as Pat already pointed out, certainly within the ancient Greek world, it's the same thing for the Assyrians and the Babylonians and the earlier Sumerians. This was, I think this is something. It was very common to feature phallic symbols and ideas in the literature. It's in the I believe it's Enki and Urshag the chief god in that story literally takes his giant penis and is like shoving it into the ground and ejaculating, in order to create vegetation.
Wow.
It's a common theme, and against this backdrop, it's easy then to see how naturally a reading that we've discussed for this particular passage. And I need to stress that Dan McClellan, who is Francesca Stavrakopoulou's PhD student, he made the point today in the live stream we did on Derek's channel on MythVision that Professor Stavrakopoulou is a little surprised at how much of a reaction this she's dedicated like a page to it out of her 500-page book, this reading in Isaiah, when there's lots of other texts from within the Hebrew Bible which seem even more clearly in some instances to be featuring Yahweh's pubic region, right?
Don't forget, you have Dionysus and Venus have a son named Priapus, and this guy is always depicted with his.
Oh, there you go.
The Shalim hanging out.
Yep. So the only thing I would add to what Kip just said is I have two things. One, I think the reason some, and I'm just going to call it the conservative apologist community that want to rehabilitate Isaiah 6:1, is I think the other examples Francesca gives are the ones they can't really doubt. This one, though, this is one that maybe they can argue back into conservatism and go, well, look, we proved her wrong on one. They're not addressing the other ones, right? So, again, this might be there may be a motivation to rehabilitate their own scholarship, if you want to call that, their own interpretation of the text, or at least a traditional interpretation, which I talked a little bit about earlier. The second thing is gods of again, I look more at the Mediterranean, but the ancient Near East is also qualifies. Ethnic groups, ethnicities in these regions, their pantheons were their personification of their cultural identity. It wasn't just our gods and your gods. Our gods are better than your gods, particularly when we're in war, hostilities, and these things were occurring where there were cultural tensions in these regions. Right. So, in no pun intended, the ancient gods had dick measuring contests, which the regions were a part of, because my kingdom's partial submission, the last war being lost, was a demasculization of our gods by foreign deities. These are really important. So having a powerful god, again, I think 6:1 can be interpreted as a euphemism for God's glory, but penis being one of those representative symbols. So those two interpretations are, I think, the only ones that really can be drawn out of the text. A euphemistic approach to, or a more direct literal reading, which is then now we're talking about genitalia. So again, I don't think it's open to that much of dispute at this point. And I'm convinced, just because of the scholarship Kip and I've worked on the last couple weeks or so.
Wow. It's incredible. I think you guys are, I'm sold on this. I think you guys are made a good case here. But thank you, Darren, for that super chat.
Well, I do want to bring up that the Greeks had a pretty open attitude towards what penises look like. This is just a vase for holding liquids that was kind of just, you may see this at a dinner party. This is really a rare piece from the 6th century, but it does show that Greeks were willing to have them as objects of art and common usage throughout their homes. We have some phalluses here.
By the way, that's Ammon, or that's Ammon and Alexander the Great next to him.
Right.
That's from Luxor. I know. Mary Beard showed me in her documentary.
Right. So there's multiple gods depicted, but the depiction of Egyptian deities with large phallus starts pretty early. We have it from the very late part of the Old Kingdom throughout the Ptolemaic and even Roman periods of Egypt. So again, a god's phallus being larger than average, because I mean, Just
everything
look at
about
way
the
they're
god is
drawn.
larger than average.
Everything is larger,
right?
right? So again, a large phallus is a depiction of virility and strength and power of a god.
Right.
And we just had to get that joke in on Derek. I just want to say that.